Like I've answered a couple of questions in the WHS just
Yeah.
out of my own knowledge
Yeah.
about them, so I haven't referenced anything. Is there anything I need to put there?
You need to find a reference that supports what you say. You can't use yourself, even though you do have good knowledge of it, you have to find something that supports it. But you will if you go to the King's Dome and
I think I went through the notes. I will think
and you
I
can
finish that tonight, but I went through
I
the
did
notes and
notice
there's some
too
in
this
there.
morning.
And the
I
book,
went
I think,
through
that
King's
came out.
Dome looking for information, went to the references at the bottom, which was web, clicked on those, page not found.
Yeah, we are in the process of reviewing all that stuff because now we're getting enough staff to actually do it because of the new takeover. We're trying to fix up those links because I found a few when I've gone through each one.
Well, I tried two this morning.
I think I just
They
wrote it down,
change them
hasn't marked
on a
it.
monthly basis, some of them, which is just crazy. But so what I've said is we'll do, and I'm hoping we'll be able to do, is if there's a link, we need to have a hard copy. So if the link goes, we can give you the hard copy. So you can reference the King's Dome. There's apparently word going around that you can't, because one educator said no, you can't reference King's Dome. I've checked with the head of school and Marie, the coordinator. Use it as a web page. In the next edition of APA, there'll actually be online learning tools you can reference. There's a method for doing that. But mum, use it as a web page.
So how would you put it in your answers?
Okay, so you reference it as obviously author's King's Unitech, and then you put in the particular unit that you're doing as the name of the web page.
Like
So
for instance,
HTLM 111 communication, topic 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you're giving a direct quote, then you have to use a page number, but that gives us a bit of a guide because there's a lot of topics on there.
Even if it is in-text referencing?
Yeah. In the in-text, if you do that, you're going to have to do a whole reference anyway. The in-text,
I was putting Unitech 2004
Yeah.
brackets.
that's all you have to do for the in-text reference, but
In-text
you have to do a full
Oh, yeah.
reference.
In
Now,
the last
Deb's
house,
own
yeah.
post, isn't it? So I just rearrange, like write it in my own words, but can you get it straight from there and just put that in there?
As a direct quote, it can't be your whole answer. What they want you to do, and I'll talk about in a second, is paraphrasing.
I just
So-
read it.
Yeah, read it, put it into your own words, use that as a paraphrased answer. So you give them King's Unitech, whatever it is, the modular unit underneath it.
Yeah,
So
right.
do the in-text reference to it.
So one of my questions was to write an example of risk assessment, the hierarchy and so forth, in your own words, which I did. I made up a story.
Yeah, if it's in your own
What
words, if they ask you for it in your own words, then you don't have to reference that, obviously. If they ask you for, and then one of the big examples is they talk about reflection, right? When they ask you to reflect on your clinical practice. And it's about what you did on clinical, how you handled it. So if you're talking about your personal experience, there is no reference for that, but they don't need one because they're not asking for it.
Well, here was the question. Use an example within the healthcare setting to demonstrate your understanding of hierarchy of control.
Yep.
So I've written a scenario out. And
Yep.
write
And
out.
they don't need to, if you've written the scenario yourself, that's fine. But you'll have to reference the hierarchy of control because that comes from somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because at the bottom of it I put resemblance to any person living or dead is purely coincidence.
They'll give me a laugh at least. I'd like that. See, that appeals to me. But because you're using hierarchy of control, that's on the King's Dome, and it's in lots of other places. Just use your King's Dome to reference only your hierarchy of control. Because that's an idea or a concept that's come from somewhere.
So if you were to reference King's Dome, you just put it in brackets saying King's Dome, the unit, and then the topic.
I'll show you in a minute how it comes out.
I think I just looked at the, because I printed the pages out. Yeah. I
Depends
just
if
typed
you
it
use
in.
Word
It's
or
on the
not.
bottom of the page that I
Who
printed out.
uses Word here?
Yeah.
Everyone. I've got the little tube that they give you online, for using the referencing system in Word, because it works really well. I only discovered it recently after doing a big assessment. And one of my kids said, "Why don't you use the referencing tab in Word?" I went, "Why didn't you tell me this 6 months ago when I was writing this?" She went, "Oh, I thought you'd know."
And 30 assessments later.
It would have saved me hours and hours and hours. But there you go. Never rely on your children for anything. Oh, they did it with all the best intent, but it's going to work. Every time I run this, it works elsewhere. Excuse me for one moment. I'm a gadget person, I can't help it. Right, there we go. Fine. Okay, so the question we ask is, right, why do we need to reference? All right, it's important, right, for a couple of reasons, right. One is that the educator needs to know where you get your information from, so we can validate that information to say it's correct. The idea of vet training or vet education is that we give you a competent or not yet competent mark. We normally don't give you a percentage like they do at university. And how we decide that is one of the questions you have to ask yourself: does this person understand this unit that they've written their assessment on? And we have to be able to go, yeah, they do. And we can tell that by the fact that you've done lots of reading on it and that your assessment reflects that there is a bit of reading in it. That you've read the King's Dome, that's important too, and you've gone elsewhere. So it gives us the opportunity, if we see a really good idea, and we get ideas from some of the assessments, where to go and look that up, we can bring that into future teaching. So it's important, and it gives credence to the other people who've done the work. It gives them respect for their work. So, when should we use a reference? Right? When should you use a reference? Right? So, anytime you quote something, facts, figures, all right, a theme or an idea from an author, you have to reference it. You have to give them credit for their thought and for their work. Every time we do a picture, right, we put in a nice sketch someone's done, and I do it all the time. I use little pictures from different places. You've got to reference it if it's an assessment. It's important that you, and if it is off Google Images, it will give you a website that it comes from. So remember to do that. Remember that you got to, if you do want to put pictures in, give them a reference.
But now, do they disappear? Sorry, I put in a graph.
Yeah.
And when I cut and
Transfer it to
pasted
the
it to
King's
the
Dome?
thing, I couldn't find it in there. And so I just had to wipe it out and then come back and just put the statistics down. But I had this round.
Yeah, so I don't know about picture transfer across to it. I'd have to ask Ben.
It's just that it went and it was just a circle.
Yeah, it probably might not take pictures. I thought it would have, but I could be wrong. I'll ask Ben. I'll find out for you.
And it changes its.
Yeah, it changes.
Formats.
It flattens out the text and stuff. Yeah, because it's not Word.
Yeah.
Apparently, it works better if you're coming from an Apple product.
Oh.
So I'm told, but I'm not an Apple user, so check my iPad and I don't transfer onto the King's Dome. So if you use direct quotes, right, this is what the author said. One of the classics is a definition. They want you to define work, right? And you go into your dictionary or you go onto a website, you put inverted commas, you give it a proper reference, and it requires a page number, and I'll give you an example of that. Okay? And And when you're paraphrasing, we've talked about paraphrasing, that's using their words and changing it into your words and putting it over to paper.
Yeah, I know I did one answer in the last one. I thought, geez, I hope I've paraphrased that enough. I've done it
Yeah.
as much as I can, but it still
Good.
seems awful close to.
Yeah, but
Yes, you know.
sometimes it will be awful close because you'll agree with it,
Yeah.
right? If it's, you have to change, some of those words are changed will give you a bit of room on that. In university, they won't give you as much room, but in this we will. So, in-text referencing, everybody gets sort of a bit frustrated with this. Again, it gives us as a marker where you got if you've just got a reference list at the end, we don't know what refers to what. So the in-text referencing indicates, because you have to add more than one reference in an assessment. So we know which reference it refers to. So all you need to do for an in-text reference is you add the author's name and the year of publication, if that is a paraphrased quote or a paraphrased piece of work. If it's a direct quote, you can see there, the first top one there is the paraphrased version of it, which is where I got this from. That is if I gave it a direct quote. That's where I'd have to go.
So like I'm on Work Safe Australia
Yep.
side, I think at the moment.
Yep.
I'm currently in their bullying part.
Yep.
So
If you
I would
take exactly
reference
what
where-
they write, if you referencing exactly what they write, you do exactly that, but you put in the page number that it came from.
Oh, the name and the year and the page.
Name of the author or the institution that wrote it, the year that it was produced, and the page.
but what if it doesn't have that in the
The
website?
websites, most of them don't have like page numbers.
Then don't worry about it. You have to leave it out. And in that reference I gave you, in that guide I gave you, it's got something without page numbers in it. What?
Because too, I know once before we were told that there's always a date at the bottom,
There's not always a date.
and there's not.
No,
No.
no. It's not easy to get. Again, if
So
it's not
I've
there,
just put at the top, information retrieved and
Yep.
the date.
and that's the way around it. It's the date you retrieved it. So paraphrasing. It doesn't match the source word for word, because that's a direct quote, right? It involves putting the passage from your source into your own words. So you might read 3 or 4 articles and say, oh yeah, that's what I agree with all of these, and I like this bit out of here and this bit out of here, and you put it all down on paper. Give all those authors their credit. So you don't have to get an opinion from one piece of work. You can get it from 3 or 4 pieces of work. Just reference them, right? There's no issue with that. Doesn't matter if you have 4 references, if that's how you got it. It shows us that you're doing reading on the question. You're thinking about the question. Part of our job as an educator, and part of this course is based on the idea that you think about what you're writing. Otherwise, we just hand you the answers, wouldn't we? Right? It's about getting you to look and refer and think about what's best practice. As you said, you've gone on to WorkSafe websites. There's other people who've used other websites. Right? The more information you get, the better it is. Okay? So, but they still must be attributed to their original source, which is fair enough. Summarising, it's very, very similar, right? It still doesn't match the source word to word, but you're summarising the whole page. So you might say, you got this long page, and I'll keep using the word thing, about back injury, right? You got a whole page on how people get back injury. And you might summarise the page in saying, back injury is common in Australia, 14% of workers get back injury, right? You summarise what was said in the page in a couple of lines. That's all you got to do is give it, treat it as a paraphrased quote, and just do it the same as if you were paraphrasing. Quotations, right? Match, it's pretty straightforward. It's what you cut and paste out of it, right? You cut a piece out, you paste it in your work, and that's when you need to put in that page number. If it's a book or Again, if it's a website that's got a page number, or sometimes you'll download a journal off a web page and look at it, you'll have the page number on it. So the reference list, right? It simply lists all the details, right, that you've used of the texts that you've used in your assessment. So you need to be, whether you've quoted them directly or whether it's been a paraphrased or it's been a summarised piece of work, you have to make a reference list, right? Where you put that reference list, we're pretty liberal about. You can either put the reference under each question, if you want to, or you can put a reference list on the last question that covers the whole assessment. It doesn't matter. Everybody has a different idea. Some people find it easy to reference under each question. That's up to you guys. And a bibliography, if you want to include it, there is no requirement for you to include a bibliography. It's just about all the books that you've read on that topic that you haven't used inside the work. So you haven't needed to quote it, cite it, whatever you want to call it. And what that shows the educator is that you've done a bit more reading other than the King's Dome and just the required text in the King's Dome. It gives us, again, if you're close on whether you've got this right or not, we'll look at your bibliography and say, oh, well, they did some extra reading, and we might just go, yeah, well, I think they probably understand it because they did all that extra reading. So it's not a requirement, but it's good to use if you need it.
So even if you don't use it in your actual assessment,
It can be called a bibliography, yeah.
Oh,
Reference. Reference is what's used in the assessment. Bibliography is not is what you don't use in your assessment.
gotcha.
It's just reading about whatever it is. So you know that in semester 1, and we said this, it is 3 references for the whole assessment, right? And you have to obviously reference everything, but you can use the same reference. King's Dome is probably the easiest one to talk about. Is you can use that in 10 questions, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. But you still have to have 3 different references from 3 different sources.
So what's a journal reference?
Journals are a bit liberal on at the moment because when you get your Royal College of Nursing membership, which you all signed the paperwork for, that will give you access to a whole heap of journals.
Yeah, and
So
they're
you
all-
get access to the Australian Nursing Journal, and there's about, I think there's 50 or 60 different journals on there at least.
Going to say, 'cause
At the moment, we don't worry about journals too much. You can find some journals online, but not always. But just use a website for the moment. That's, you know, yeah.
So for every single assessment that we have had in this first semester, we have to do 1 journal, 1 website, and 1 textbook.
For the
And then-
whole of the assessment, to cover all, say, 10 questions or 12
And does it
questions.
matter if we use like the same ones, the same references for each assessment?
No,
Yeah. And
if
then,
that's what you've got, if that's what relates to that assessment,
yeah.
that's what you can use.
And then it goes up to 2 each.
Yeah,
And then
I'm
for
about to
each-
go. So,
Yeah.
that's right, second semester,
Yeah.
you go to 2 of each type.
For each assessment.
And by that time you'll have your Royal College of Nursing and it'll be better. It doesn't matter if you use more. If you use 20 references, doesn't matter, right? That's just your minimum referencing.
Because I
Yeah.
haven't been able to find any journals with
That's
this
all right.
first assessment.
Just for the moment.
Yeah, I do.
As I said, we're aware that you don't have your Royal College Nursing access yet. Once you do, yeah, we'll expect you to find journals there to do it. And let me tell you, it's great because journals, there's so many different points of view in them. They're easy enough to find when you search the site because you can search for actually what you're looking for.
Yeah, Jason actually mentioned yesterday it's all come back.
Yeah, good. So we should have those soon.
Yeah.
So is that, are they just like experiences?
No, it's like a magazine, a bit like a little magazine. And the Australian Nurses Journal covers, it may have 15 different topics. One about anaesthetic nursing, one about emergency nursing. And they'll give you little articles about it and things, stories people have written or stories about people or studies that have been done. And it's all about that particular topic, which is nursing.
They're good to read.
So with the New South Wales Nurses Union, the lamplight, would
Yep.
that be considered a journal?
Oh, that's a really good one, isn't it?
Is that a magazine?
Well, if you're a member of the union, they get that.
Yeah. It could be considered as a magazine.
Yeah.
A journal is normally from a professional body, and I suppose the union, I'd have to query that one. That one I can't tell you.
Yeah, it's
a good
officially
question, huh?
submitted, a journal is, that it,
But you can still refer to it as a magazine.
Yeah,
anyway.
but it's still got what's happening in the
Yeah.
workplace and different experiences of nurses and
Yeah.
that. So whether you could reference it or whatever.
I will ask, and I'll give you an answer. Because I would have thought it would have been a journal, but I don't know. So, semester 3, we've made it easy. 1, 2, 3. So, 3 of each kind.
So now if you're putting, I put mine at the end of each question.
Yep, that's okay.
So that's all right.
That's
I've
okay.
got it.
That's not a
I've got
problem.
at least 3.
Glenn
I
has,
thought I had to do 3.
Glenn has,
yeah, I don't.
has said if you put them at the end of each question, that's fine, or whether you put them at the end, it doesn't matter. She's head of school, and Marie agrees with her. So she's the course coordinator. So they're the 2 people that actually matter, that decide.
I
Yeah.
thought you would anyway, so that you know that pertains to that.
Yeah, but your in-text reference gives you that if you do it at the end. Because you'll have them in there and you go down, oh, that's what that reference refers
So if
to.
I haven't in text, I don't think, because I've worded it,
You still need to in-text
do my
reference.
own thing, and then I'll
Yeah, I'll
divide
admit I'm probably
Yeah.
having a lot to either.
Who's
Because
your
I didn't
educator?
Oh,
Moira.
Moira?
Moira.
Yeah. Moira's has sent stuff back to people saying, look, I'm pretty liberal about this for the moment, for this semester, till we get all the referencing sorted out. So it normally, and I can't quote you for every educator, you don't fail just because you haven't referenced completely. All right?
Yeah.
It's not a way we don't. We're more interested in content.
Gladys actually told me that. She said
Yeah.
we don't fail you for reference.
No.
Yeah, well, it's just that I thought that you put it there because, like you're saying, because that's what I used for that answer,
Yeah.
and it's only this much, so.
Yeah. So that's all right. We'll get that.
There's no box, just referencing.
And if you're having trouble referencing, come in and see us and sit down and have a chat with us. We can do a one-on-one session and go over it with you. That's no problem.
It was just I didn't think that we were allowed to cut and paste, so I.
It's called a
What I
direct
do is
quote.
I
You can
sort of
do.
get the
You
thing
can't
and
do
go.
it. You can't give a direct quote for your whole answer. All right? Unless it says, give us a definition of.
I think I defined something in
Yeah.
the one,
So if
that
it's a
one,
definition,
And I
I'll
wrote-
probably just copy it.
Good.
from the
You
dictionary.
could have
Because
told
you
me that
can't-
this morning.
I know, well, I even got the dictionary.
You can't write a definition. You can't put a definition in your own words. Right?
I've done it. I've done it.
But you,
Sentences
yeah.
in my own sort of way.
yeah.
But that's,
And
yeah,
you get
we've
away
got
with
it
that.
pretty good, and I've
But
even
if
got
they're
the
asking
dictionary
you
up.
for a definition of, you have to go to a nursing dictionary or whatever it is to give you a defined
Because one
answer.
of the questions was to define the terms of like risk, hazard,
Oh,
environment.
so we can just
You get
get them
those
from
out of
them.
it, you can cut and paste those basically.
So that's all right for that one?
one.
Oh, because I
I'm
looked
going to
up all
say
this
a
stuff.
bit this morning.
I looked up all this stuff and made up my own thing.
That's all right though. And again, we allow for that.
I said my
What I'm struggling with is the 4 types of fire extinguishers and the types of fires that are used for.
What
If you look
colour
at
beans?
Put that into your own words because that is factually, you can't
Yeah.
reword.
Cut and paste it.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I don't worry about that. That is, there is no other way to define what a dry chemical powder extinguisher does.
But if you don't use all the words, like if you just say that's
information.
really useful
For
here,
who?
that's all right.
New
Yeah,
South Wales
it's okay.
Fire Authority or
Yeah.
Queensland Fire Authority.
Yeah, we
one.
couldn't
Yeah.
find anywhere that told us what the coloured beans for the different ones were.
I think
Yeah,
we
I've
went
got
to
that
BOC
site
or
reference.
something.
Yeah, BOC
BOC.
is a really good one.
BOC.
They're the
Yeah.
gas people. They do all the gases.
Yeah, I think I just looked up fire extinguisher.
Or fire-
If you go
Firefighting
to one of the
enterprises.
the Metropolitan Fire Department's websites,
I went to the Chuck website,
yeah,
Yeah,
Chuck-
I went there as
but
well.
they didn't have the colour bands, they
Yeah.
just had like the time.
Metropolitan Fire Brigade one took up those. They
There was
are
a couple
really good
more
for
than,
it.
I think it asked for 4. But is
Queensland
there about
Health.
5 or 6? There was a
Queensland
small
Health
one.
Fire and Safety is another one you can look at.
Or any of the companies that actually sell them.
Yeah.
Well, we did.
Yeah.
We looked at one that told us what they were and what they were for, but not the coloured bands on them.
Yeah,
Oh,
but the
yeah.
Queensland Health one will, because it's there for everybody to read.
Yeah.
You look at, I think it's fire and safety. They might have changed it because they've just changed who does all their training. at
See,
that
I'm
moment.
hopeless. I just put in what it is, like, and it's colours.
Yeah.
Somehow it come up.
I'm about to get upset with me. Okay, so plagiarism. It is a big problem for some people. We haven't had a lot this year, which has been really, really good. We did have a bit last year. We had a couple of incidents where students deliberately copied each other's work, where students accidentally, because they work in a check group, said exactly the same thing. And we had someone who got someone else to write their assignments for them, but then they upset that person, so they came and complained to the school. So those people had to resubmit all of their work to pass. They're lucky if they were in uni, they'd be gone. They wouldn't be allowed back. But they had to resubmit all their work. And it can't be the same as what they submitted the first time, because we have a copy of that. But, so, the one about check groups, you've just got to be careful. When you work in a check group, there's nothing wrong with sharing information, and you will put similar things down, and your educators know that, right? But if you quote exactly the same thing, right, please, you know, we will pick it up. I had an example last year where two students gave me a quote, and the reason I caught them is they misspelled the quote the same way. They put, instead of putting Bob Hawke, they both called him Bob Hawke. And they both gave the wrong date for when he was in power. They actually meant Gough Whitlam, but they were just a little bit out. So that was a really easy pick up, and I just made them resubmit the assessments again and made sure they were different, that they wrote them themselves. And it wasn't just that, it was just a heap of other things, but that was my first. I'm sure I've read this in a previous assessment somewhere. So plagiarism is copying another part of a student's work, or any whole or part, presenting other people's work, designs or images, right, as your own work. Right? Submitting work as your own that someone else has done for you. As I said, we had that example. Submitting items of assessment that are written in conjunction with other students without prior permission of the relevant staff member. What that actually means is that if you're working in a group and you submit, this is your total work, and you haven't made an agreement with your students and your educator, that can be considered plagiarism, which we don't do a lot of that. So that's already been submitted for assessment in another course. Let me tell you, we can tell. A lot of us use plagiarism websites or plagiarism tools. I've got one on my iPad. I use one at home from UQ, and it has a database that is a copy of every piece of assessment that has been submitted around the world in English-speaking schools and institutions.
Wow.
They're getting now to the point where they're actually doing high school ones. So they're including the high schools into this, from year 10 on.
But
So
how do
if
you
you
know
don't-
if you've answered a question, like work health and safety, I mean,
Yeah,
we've done that at least twice
yep.
at TOEF. So,
You still need,
without meaning to, you may have written it almost the same because you've answered it before.
if it's not
And it's a
exactly the
mindset.
same. There's an allowance in those programs for being similarly worded, because we're all using the same resource material for Kingstone, so you're going to get similar wording,
Yeah.
right? But if you go cut and paste bang, submit, right? That's plagiarism,
Yeah.
right? You've submitted it for another piece of work. You've just said it's similar, but you've rewritten it because from our perspective, we're writing it from an enrolled nurse perspective. If you go to university and they ask the same question, you're writing it from a registered nurse perspective. And that's what changes the wording a bit. But the same basis there, because workplace and health is the same for an AIN as it is for a director of nursing.
Yeah, I haven't gone
Yeah.
back and looked at anything, but you think, geez, I'm the same person with the same
Yeah.
mindset and the same knowledge.
But there'll be a
It could be very
difference in there.
close.
There'll be a definable difference in there. You may not realise it, but you do it.
Yeah.
I've done similar things myself. I've thought, did I write that last time? No. I changed a few words, that's all right. But I never looked back at my previous work. And that's what they're hinting at, is that, say for instance you did aged care here. We'll RPL you for the units that you've done, so why do you need to cut and paste that? Because it means that there is a significant difference for what you submitted to them than what you need to submit here. So, again, if you have used someone else's work without acknowledging the source, you plagiarise. It's pretty straightforward, isn't it? You just have to acknowledge the source. Alright? We know about submission. We are now signing an anti-plagiarism agreement, and there can be consequences if you do plagiarise once you've signed that commitment. And it's about honesty. This is a little clip on the Word referencing tool. If you're using Word from about 2003 up, it has a reference tab. And it will do your APA referencing format for you. You just got to type into the little boxes.
I tried that. It came out different. Yeah.
But sometimes it does come out different.
It just didn't come out right.
If you use it, that's the
And
acceptable
if you've
way.
got one on there and you can't get rid of it, I couldn't get rid of it.
Ah,
I delete it.
This will help you. This will tell you what to do about that. We're going to run into something.
Oh, shut up.
This video is going to show you how to use the References tab in Microsoft Word to add your references and your works cited page. So go ahead and click on References, and underneath the Manage Sources, go ahead and click on that. And every time that you have a source, you're going to click New and put it into your system. You'll notice that I already have 2 sources in my system. If you're just starting out, you won't have any. So let's click on New. You're going to pull down to what type of source it is. If it's a book, then you would follow the examples. When you click in an item, you'll see over here, it tells you down at the bottom how they want you to enter this. So I'll just do exactly the authors that they show. Then underneath the title, you'll see you want to capitalize it, but no question, italics or anything like that. What year, it shows you how to type in the year. The city, again it gives you the sample and the publisher. Okay. If you need more fields, click on the Show All Fields, and there will be all kinds of other ones in case there's an editor or it's a multi-volume book, etc. You click OK, and now that particular book is added in. I click New, and if I want another one, for example, if it's a journal article, or maybe it's an online, it's a website, it will walk me through everything that I need. And again, I can click Show All. The ones with the star are the ones that are needed if you have a quality source. So if you don't have an author on that website, it might be one that isn't very reliable, and some of these other things. So the ones without a star are not necessarily used on a website unless it's available. Okay, so now that I have some sources here, let's see how to use those. I'm going to click Close, and let's see, say in my paper, right here is a source. So I click here, I'm on my References tab, and I can insert a citation, and I pick the particular source that my book is on. Now you'll notice only one of the books is showing, even though I have more than one in here. Okay, here's my citation, and I say, you know what? I actually needed a different source. Let me go to Manage Sources. I need to make sure that all of my sources are over here for this particular item. Okay, I'm pretending I need to add another source here, insert citation. You'll notice all of my sources now. You'll notice that it is last name, comma, and the date, and that's APA style. If I need MLA style instead, I can pick MLA 7th or 6th edition, whichever one my professor wants me to use. And so whenever I add these sources, notice that there's no page number here or no date here, because that's MLA style versus APA style, which requires a date. If I need to edit this, it's a direct quote and I need to add a page number, I just click here and I go to edit source, or I'm sorry, edit citation, and I can add my page numbers in. I click OK, and you'll notice it puts it in APA style. If I needed MLA, I could pull up here to MLA and it will change it to the MLA fashion. Okay, once I'm completely done, I need to put in my works cited page. I'm going to go to the end of my item. I'm going to click here, and I'm going to first insert a blank page. Or I can just hit the enter so that I'm on my last page. Then under references, look at how easy, insert a bibliography. And there it is, and it's in the correct style, exactly how it is. If I don't want MLA, I come down here to APA. You'll notice it changes the style perfectly. So that's how to use the References tab in Microsoft Word to create your citations and also your bibliography. Notice that you can click here and delete these things too. Hope that helped you work with MLA and APA format using the References tab in Word.
That's like this.
Off YouTube, if you want a copy of it, if you want a copy of it, I can give you it on a stick if you want it, or go onto YouTube and using References tab in Word. Yeah. And it'll come up with that. There's a few of them, that's the best I could find.
What was it?
Using the Reference tab in Word.
I've got the hang of that. I'm having trouble with identifying who the author is on some websites, like Australian Government, Department of Health.
What you do is then you say it's a corporate author, and you put Department of Health.
They're not Queensland Government, because Queensland Government shows all the
Covers so
every
many
single one of
things,
them.
yeah. So, because it's put out by the Department of Health, they're the corporate author.
Okay.
So you actually write corporate author.
No,
No, it hasn't.
On that.
in that, you click corporate author and it just moves it in there.
Because it has author or corporate author.
Yeah, and then you got a little tick box, and it'll move, if you put in author, it'll just move it into corporate author. So, the corporate author for Kingsdome is King's Unitech.
So what about Tadness? Is that a corporate author?
No, that's got 3 authors. If you have a look, only reason I know that, because I actually helped someone reference it today.
So I've been like copying the website
Yeah, but you need to copy the website
and
address and all
transfer
into it.
it.
Yeah, that's
as my
part of what, if you click on website in that, then you'll find that it will give you a URL that you need to cut and paste into there.
Yeah, so I've just had the big long
Yeah.
Yep.
line as my reference.
Yeah,
Is
so
that-
you just
No.
paste like you have been on the
There
paper.
needs
you
to
cut
be
and paste
information
into
about it.
that.
Yeah,
thing.
they will pick that up. But have you got Word? Yeah, have a look at it. If you want to, if you've got a USB, I've got the actual. I made it into an MP4 so I can give it to people.
So that if I do cut and paste it,
Yeah,
That's all right.
it'll bring it up.
yeah, it'll bring it across. I type it when I do my assessments online now because I'm just adapting to online. I type everything in Word and I cut and paste it. That way I keep a copy of it.
Yeah, that's
Right.
what
If it gets lost, a couple of girls have lost stuff here, they've had to retype it all, right? I've got there and just go cut and paste, bang, I'm right. And I keep that as my assessment.
Yeah, I've got it as Word,
Yeah,
and then I
yeah.
go to Kingston.
I like Blackboard because you can upload to Blackboard, so you can upload your Word documents to them. It's much better. But we've got what we've got.
So instead of me just copying and pasting as my reference, I go into that thing
Yep.
and it'll tell me what to
Yep.
write from that bar.
Yep.